Hello, Restless Adventurers. We're here at the Stewartstown Railroad in Stewartstown, Pennsylvania. It was chartered in 1885, so this railroad has been in continuous operation since 1885. Never merged, never sold. You can still get the original stocks from the company. So we're here to take a ride on one of the oldest, and maybe even the oldest, continuously operating railroad in the United States. So my name's Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
Channel's Restless Viking. Let's go have an adventure.
I know, right?
We've been in disguise. You look fabulous, darling.
Thank you. Those are disgusting. Pretty.
I was honestly a little taken aback by how easily Poppins joined in on the witchy theatrics.
Two cab rides. We only keep him because he's been here so long.
Yeah,
But
it's one of those
he never gets his work done. So have you ever ridden with us before?
No.
For a little history, this railroad dates back to 1884. It was founded in 1884 and completed in 1885. We still operate under our original charter, which means we've never been bought, sold, or traded. This is the original company operating under the same governing structure, just as it did in the 1880s. Biggest difference now, we don't get paid. Everybody you see today is a volunteer. All of our paperwork for right-of-way, for the charter paperwork, that's all the original paperwork from 1884.
And you still issue stock yourself from your secretary, like
Yes.
from the company, like $500
Yes.
a share.
And the shares you get a paper.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's funny because when they issue them, there's a few things that have to be crossed off because they're the original papers. I started working here at 16. So
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. In 1884, the farmers and businesses of the Stewartstown area got together to form a railroad. The roads and trails of the area were still underdeveloped and took days to make the journey to New Freedom, Pennsylvania, where they could connect to the main line.
I should get a hat.
An engineer's hat?
Yes.
Where can you get those?
Yeah, I'm going to check the gift shop.
Yeah, that's what we should do. Let's head down.
All right.
We were instructed to find Jim, the engineer for this ride. We assumed he was the guy switching power for one of the cars.
I can't help but feel like it's like the Polar Express.
As you can tell from Poppins' hat, we'll be in the cab of the train.
We get to be in the engine.
By 1885, 7.4 miles of track were laid and the railroad began operation as a common carrier. 138 years later, Stewartstown Railroad is still a complete railroad, not just a branch line. It has its own station, tracks, engine house, bridges, and rail yard. You would be hard-pressed to find a more vintage railroad than Stewartstown.
He's all with the railroad stuff, so he's going with me. You need my for Amtrak. Got me hired on Amtrak a month later.
Our time in the cab was spent with Jim and Jen. Jim is a wealth of knowledge and experience, and Jen is soon to be the first female engineer of Stewartstown.
Roger, number 10 clear, number 10 out.
First woman engineer. Oh, this is so exciting.
The railroad wouldn't exist without the tireless efforts of many skilled and dedicated volunteers like Jim and Jen. So this is the throttle?
This is ground throttle, locomotive brake, car brake. So every time I apply the locomotive brake, this brake comes on automatically.
Oh, okay. When flagmen control a crossing in Pennsylvania, it is considered exempt, meaning school buses and hazardous cargo don't have to stop every time they cross the tracks. We eased by the original engine house located at the railroad's busiest crossing.
Let me know when you're on the move. Yeah, let me know when you're on.
The management and shareholders of Stewartstown includes locals, long-distance shareholders, rail fans, and generally people that didn't want to see another railroad abandoned. Many of the shareholders include descendants of the original investors. All of the original 7.4 miles of track still exist, but only a portion is certified to hold the locomotive. Hurricane Agnes destroyed the connecting line in the 1970s in a long legal battle with a former past president's estate, caused the track to fall into disrepair. When the legal issues were resolved in 2015, volunteers began restoring the track. We're coming up on the Iron Bridge, which is an old iron bridge that they modernized, so now we can cross it pretty safely, but yeah. So being a volunteer organization, it's not easy to fix tracks with lack of money and a crew. So they've only got a couple miles of the track done. Right here is where it ends. But they've continued on. But honestly, they didn't think they would get this far.
All they gotta do is technically give her a check ride on the territory she's gonna run over to make sure she's good to go.
Okay. So the qualifying, is that with just one railroad, or is that like a Department of Transportation qualification?
Federal government, it's through the FRA.
Yep.
Okay, it's kind of like a pilot's license then. Okay.
Like I do fireman here, I can do conductor, I can do run the engine, track work.
So if you watch, when I pull the throttle, watch the needles. Okay. See how it moves up? It moved up? Yeah. And I'll let off the throttle and it goes down. So now, what happened is the diesel engines turn into the generator, creating 300 volts down to the traction motors, which is actually powered. It's actually powered by electric, if you think about it.
Yeah.
These are my air pressure gauges. And then, of course, the wipers are air powered.
So cute.
They're air powered. The bell, this is the sander. So if I start slipping, if I go forward, put sand on the front wheels, sand on the back wheels, it gives me traction. These are all the control switches. So I got puts the cab light on inside at night.
Since the line is almost 140 years old, Jim was able to point out the old
Back
infrastructure.
up, they would dump the coal out of the hopper cars, and then they would hand shovel the coal into the locomotives.
And volunteers performed at various locations along the tracks for the Halloween train.
The original rail. They got original cinder ballots.
Probably my favorite part of the Stewartstown Railroad is the company's dedication to the personal and professional growth of its volunteers. To me, that's the mark of truly good people doing good things. From training new crew to the junior conductor program, the Stewartstown Railroad has positively affected the lives of many people.
He said I got to blow the horn.
We had a great time visiting Stewartstown. The history alone is fascinating, but it's the people that make it great.